Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing well. So, in this book by Sheikh Fawzan, there is a very interesting section on the systematic order of the universe and its precision. In this section, he speaks about the oneness of Allah, and he starts with a Quranic ayat for us, 2391. No son or offspring or children did Allah beget, nor is there any ilah God along with him. If there had been many gods, behold, each God would have taken away what he had created, and some would have tried to overcome the others. So here essentially he explains to us some insights into this ayat about how the true God is a necessary creator who acts, and that there is no being that shares in the kingdom of Allah, and that Allah is most lawfully and above sharing his authority. What's interesting is that he explains how if there was a partnership, that there wouldn't be love between them, there'd be enmity. And this makes me interested further because if you notice, with all the polytheistic religions, there's always some type of conflict. There's always one out trying to smart the other, especially in the Greek pantheon. Now you could say, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, but at the same time, you have to realize that, well, how could it not be? I mean, if humans can barely get along, imagine two entities that have some type of power behind them in their own will. They'd be doing something quite strange. Because each one would have an ability to do what it wants, and each one would naturally, go into the other. So what's interesting is he gives these three examples about a scenario that would come into play that would cause a sort of fissure or split, and I want to share it with you. It says, either one of the two overpowers the other and takes sole authority over the kingdom and creation. Now, if that happens, you might as well worship the one who overpowered the other, because that would mean the other one was the most powerful, the other was weaker, right? So if you were smart, you'd want to worship the one that's more powerful. You really wouldn't want to worship the one that lost, right? Or each administers his kingdom and creation without the influence of the other, and so a split occurs. I was thinking about this one, is that if there's separate influence, two different possibilities, this means that naturally some strangeness would occur. It was not going to be this simple harmonic dialogue of flow, because just as two fish swim in the water, the waves go a different way. It would be quite odd. And if you kind of look at how our Earth exists, the seasons, the night and the day, the rotation, the orbiting, just how the Earth is on its axis, the way the stars arrive, how everything moves, it's really quite fascinating. And then the third example is, or that they, the kingdom and creation, are under a single authority, one who acts therein as he wills, so he is the true God, and they are his slaves. So here, when he mentions his slaves, it's like it reminds you of authority, of submission, how we will obey what Allah has dictated for us, of our destiny, of our abilities, whether we will it or not. We are going to obey. All of creation will submit willingly or unwillingly. He mentions that previously. So the slave element is quite accurate. And then his final statement is very succinct. It's that he says, this is what exists in reality. There has never been a split or fissure in the universe. This indicates that its controller is one, without rival, and that its possessor is one, without partner. So here, when he talks about the splitting and a fissure, if you have this split, just like with a San Andreas fault line, there's a gap in between. What happens if you fall in that gap? You get crushed and hurt. If you have these two conflicting realities, it would be quite strange. We already have good and evil, this sort of binary, and the nuanced gray area in between of degrees of good and bad, right? And how they affect each other. To add in different ratios of chaotic, naughty deities who are one-upping each other would be quite odd. You know, if you really look at it, it wouldn't make sense. If one wills a tree to exist, the other one takes it down and up, down, up, down, up, down. It would be quite bizarre. And it would be very conflicting for us on who you worship. If you're going to worship a lesser one, then you're going to be worrying about, oh, don't make the other one mad. That was a big problem with the Greeks. When it's like, oh, gotta make Athena happy, oh, gotta make Apollo happy, oh, gotta make Zeus happy, oh, gotta make Hera happy. You know, Heracles, his whole story is quite sad when you read it. It's, you know, Zeus didn't really help out his son a whole lot. And Hera was jealous of Hercules, his mother, and she's the one who caused him to go through the 12 labors. She made him go psychotic and harm his own family. So already there you see how, yeah, Heracles was supposedly given a gift of demagoguery by his father, yet another deity was able to cause him complete harm, and the whole role of Hades is quite odd. It's just quite strange. It's bizarre. For us, it seems quite more smooth in a way. I'd argue. You worship Allah alone, you fear Allah alone, you're accountable to Allah alone. And you have to watch out for Iblis and his army, true, which can feel overwhelming. But in the end, you know that Allah is swift in accounting, swift in justice, and will reward or punish you accordingly to your deeds. So that to me is much better. The godship is solely with Allah, Subhanahu. Not with, you're gonna stand before this huge council of like the Egyptian pantheon, Osiris, and then Horus, and then Anubis. You're not gonna go through all of them and like lecture your case before them, right? Imagine repeating yourself endlessly for beings that are not all-knowing. Allah knows everything in existence, so you need only report to one, and when you report to one, Allah already knows. Anyways, so it's quite interesting, his concise way of explaining how, just the way in which the cosmos runs, and how that plays into the whole concept of the true God necessarily being a creator who acts and who shares no authority in his dominion, and that there's no rival either in authority and power and capability. Iblis is a petty jinn who causes trouble and can incite humans to do things that cause mass evil, but Iblis cannot create a cosmos, cannot create a galaxy, a nebula, a black hole, none of that. Only can tempt humans to do things against themselves. It's really quite interesting. All he can do essentially is manifest temptation and illusion, which is a slimy ability, but not a degree of like awness that Allah could do on any scale, because Iblis himself is created and under the submission of Allah and fears Allah. So already there you see how there's no partner or rival. It's quite interesting. What do you think?